Okay, so we've got one more example like this to go. We've got y equals 4 over 3x plus 2. Again, I'm going to go ahead and make my chart, picking my x values. And again, I want to make sure I pick nice, pretty x values. So again, 0 is always a great number because I know we're sitting here at a fraction, but if I multiply this fraction 4/3 times 0, I get 0. So I like 0 as a pick for one of my x's. Now, I've got 4/3. Now, if I picked like the number 1, that wouldn't really help me any because 1 times 4/3 is still 4/3, and then I'm adding a fraction to a whole number and have to get common denominators and all kinds of good stuff like that. So I want to think about this fraction and I want to say, okay, what number could I pick that would make the fraction go away? Well, if I did 2, that wouldn't help because 2 would give me 8/3. That's not helpful. But what if I did 3? Because 3 times 4 is 12, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. So that works because I get a whole number. Typically, if you have something like this where you have a fraction, if you choose a number that the denominator divides into, you'll have an easier time with your mathematics to figure out your y value. So we could choose 3 or 6 or 9, or we could do -3 or -6. Just kind of keep that in mind. I usually just go ahead and choose whatever the denominator is because I've already done 0 because that was my easy number. So then we could do 3. Again, we're doing exactly the same thing. We're going to plug in our 0. So we're going to say y equals 4/3 times 0 plus 2. Well, again, 4/3 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is plus 2. So there's our first point, 0, 2. That wasn't that bad. So if we do our 3, and we do y equals 4 over 3 times 3 plus 2. Remember that this is 3 over 1, so technically when we do this, we would multiply straight across, which would give us y equal to 12 over 3 plus 2. But remember, we chose 3 on purpose because that made it where we could reduce this fraction, because 12 divided by 3 is just 4. So 4 plus 2, and we find out that y is equal to 6. Okay, so by choosing the denominator of that fraction, it makes it a whole lot easier to do the arithmetic to find your corresponding y value. So again, we picked x to be 0. We found y to be 2. We picked x to be 3. And we found that y was 6. Starting from our origin, we're going to graph our points. So we're going to go up 2. That's going to be our 0, 2. Again, since x was 0, we didn't move left or right. But since y was 2, we went up 2. For 3, 6, we're going to go to the right 3. And then up 6. And there's our point right there. Again, taking my ruler and connecting those dots. And there's our line of y equals 4/3 x plus 2. So for our next example, what we really have here is what I call kind of a special case. If you look at this particular equation and everything we've done in the previous 4 examples, you'll notice that all the other equations had both an x and y in it, but this guy only has an x. So he only has x, which is going to make it kind of difficult to pick a value for x and find a y because we only have an x. So what we're actually going to do here is we are actually going to solve for x. So if we take this and we divide both sides by 4, we're going to get that x is equal to -3. Now, when we go to start talking about choosing our x's and y's, we really don't get a choice on what we choose for x, because if you look right here, it's telling me that the x is -3. So for both of these values in my x column where I would typically choose the x values, it's already chosen for me. X is -3. Now here's the cool part, is you actually get to pick any number for y. The reason is because it doesn't matter what my y value is. It could be 5 million, my x is still going to be -3. So we could pick 0 and 1. You could pick 2 and 3. You could pick -5 and 7. It doesn't matter. It's going, because our x value is going to stay constant at -3. So when we go to graph this, again, remembering that x is -3 in both of these points, because my equation told me so way up here, that it told me x was -3. And then we chose 0 and 1 as our corresponding y values. Again, we got to choose them this time since the equation didn't have any y's to begin with. So if we graph these 2 points, we're going to go to the left 3, and I'm going to stay at 0 for my y. And then I'm going to go to the left 3, and I'm going to go up 1. And if you'll notice, this is a very specific straight line. It's actually a vertical line at -3. So anytime, and we can write this, anytime we have x equal to a number, positive, negative, doesn't matter, fraction, whatever it is, if we just have x equal to a number, this is a vertical line. Okay, and when you go to choose your points, okay, you do your points here, x is whatever number that we had up here. So if it was -3, if it's 5, if it's 1/2, whatever number we got when we had x by itself, and then you get to pick any value for y. This is about the only time in our problems where we're actually getting to pick any value for y, because we don't have a y in our original equation, therefore we don't have anything to plug the x into to find y. So our next example is also a special case. So we do have 2 special cases here. They're very similar to each other. If you'll notice, our equation this time is 3y equals 15. So this problem only has a y. So kind of like the previous one where it only had an x, this one only has a y. Just like the previous one though, I want to solve for y. So in this problem, I would divide both sides by 3, getting that y by itself. And I'm finding out that y is equal to 5. So again, if I'm thinking about my chart and I'm thinking about having to find points, this particular time, my y is always going to be 5, because it's telling me in my equation that y is 5. And that means that over here, we can pick any number for our x value. So we could use 0 and 3. Again, any numbers we want. Can be negative, positive, as long as they're between -10 and +10, they're going to work, because we don't have an x value in our equation, and our y is always going to be that number 5. So down here, we had 0 for our x, and remember y was equal to 5, and then we picked x to be 3, and again, y was equal to 5. So if we graph these 2 points, we have 0, so we're not moving left or right, we're just going to go up to 5. And then we have to the right 3 and up 5. And we're going to take our ruler and draw our line. And you'll notice this time, instead of getting a vertical line, we got a horizontal line at y equal to 5. So again, kind of like we talked about in our previous example, anytime we have y equal to some number, again, it could be a positive, a negative, a fraction, but it's equal to a number, no x is in there, it is a horizontal line. Okay, so when we do our chart, again, this is going to stay whatever number we found out from up here, from our y equal, and we get to pick any x value.